Hello, I'm Wendell Bauer. Just a quick note at the top, most of the events of this episode's historical subject's life can be and are contested. I will tell the story of Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable's life to the best of my knowledge and instinct. Welcome to Middle America.
Waiting the tide to come and kiss my skin like my lover did, and waiting for the sun to fall like I fell for her lips. And that is to say, in a grand display of orange and red fire that melts to the waves, my heart is the same.
In the year 1745, a boy was born on the island that today contains Haiti and the Dominican Republic. He was born with a French sailor for a father and a former African slave as a mother. His name was Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. When Jean was still a child, his father transported him back to France, providing his son with a good education that, among other skills, taught him fluency in English and Spanish, in addition to his first language of French. As Jean grew older, he returned to the island of his birth to deal in coffee, and eventually that work and trade led him to mainland America. At the age of 20, Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable landed in New Orleans, Louisiana. He then proceeded north on the Mississippi River, eventually becoming well acquainted with the Potawatomi in Illinois. Here, in 1769, he met and fell in love with a Potawatomi woman by the name of Kitty Waha. The couple were married in a Potawatomi ceremony, and in 1773 they purchased a plot of land where my hometown now stands. The land was purchased from Jean-Baptiste Maillet, who would 5 years later found La Villa de Maillet, where downtown Peoria, Illinois now stands. Also in 1773, Jean and Kitty Waha's first child, Jean-Baptiste Jr., was born. 2 years later, in the same year the American Revolutionary War began, their daughter Suzanne was born. The family built a home and cultivated 30 acres of land along the Illinois River between present-day Mary and Liberty Streets in Peoria. I mention these particular streets because Mary Street marks where there was a French fortification at the time, while Liberty Street marks the spot where Jean-Baptiste Maillet moved south in 1778. As with most of the French in the region, Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable was Catholic. In 1778, the family traveled to the French outpost of Cahokia in southern Illinois. At Cahokia, Jean and Kitty Waha married in a French Catholic ceremony. Kitty Waha picked up the Christian name of Catherine. Also around this time, Jean-Baptiste was likely traveling between Peoria and the land that would eventually become Chicago, and cultivating both spaces. His work was soon interrupted, however, by attacks by Great Lakes Indians in a British advance as the American Revolutionary War raged on. Jean-Baptiste and family fled east, but were captured at the site of what is now Michigan City, Indiana. Jean was then transported to Fort Michilimackinac and imprisoned as an American sympathizer. His captors described him as an intelligent and well-mannered man. The combination of Jean's charisma and help from influential friends soon managed to free him. It seems like a deal might have been struck as the family were transported again, this time to St. Clair, Michigan. At St. Clair, Jean-Baptiste and family were employed at the Pinery, a northeast Michigan trading post owned by a British lieutenant governor. With all of this going on, documents confusingly show the family to be residing in Peoria, Chicago, Michigan City, and Michilimackinac in the fall of 1779. It wasn't until the summer of 1784 that Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable and his family finally were able to return to their chosen residence on the western border of Lake Michigan and return to the task of building the life that they wished to lead.
Candle burns at both ends as the settlers settle in, but they can't burn that way forever, maybe till the housing fees are in. Then we can both go part-time, live off a smaller dime, be parents who are present, be artists once again. We'll be more independent, more self-reliant, less like pawns, less like sheep, masters, destiny, gods of pageantry, forever struggling, yeah, we can be your baby, you'll see.
Coming off of tour as Dominic was leaving the band in 2006 was tough. Coming home from tour had been tough in general for several years. For me, I felt like my true self was living in the van, moving down the highway. My true self was the person that hollered from stage night after night, and town after town. Home from tour in Peoria, I would sleep during the days in a spare room at my parents' house and pathetically get drunk every night. Dominic, however, held a different perspective. Dominic's true self was at home, close to family. Tour was fun for him, but for his taste, it dragged on too long. The band that we made together was Dominic's first act that didn't count his brother or sister in its members, and that made time away even more difficult. And financial stress was always a dark cloud overhead. We were living off of $5 per day and very, very rarely were able to afford a hotel room. We were often able to make friends and find a floor to sleep on, but it wasn't uncommon that we would sleep in the van. One particularly brutal night comes to mind, where we were set up in a Walmart parking lot to sleep for the night. It was the winter before Dominic's departure from the band. Temperatures outside were well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. We were each bundled up in full clothes, inside sleeping bags, upright in bucket seats. It was so cold that every 30 minutes we would wake up with teeth chattering and need to run the car with the heater on full for 30 minutes before falling asleep again to restart the cycle. I think Dominic was fairly disappointed with me that night. It was also the case that we were lonely. Neither Dominic nor myself had been able to keep a girlfriend in a couple years. Few people consider seeing their significant other for only 3 months per year as a desirable option. Also, few people find dating someone who lives with their parents and has no money desirable. In the spring of 2006, Dominic had had enough. The band had been on an upward trajectory with more national name recognition, better billings, and better audience turnouts, but it can fail to be thrilling to progress incrementally from uncomfortable, lonely, hungry, and cold. I, on the other hand, had not had enough. An offer for an opening spot on a larger tour was made just as Dominic chose to stay home. Dominic is one of my best friends, but I think I was just like, how hard can it be to replace a drummer when the most difficult tours have already been performed? The band toured continuously for another year after Dominic left. Each tour had a different drummer behind the kit. Each tour felt lonelier and lonelier as I saw my bandmates have little shared investment in the project. By the summer of 2007, I had run out of steam. I was a lonely drunk with writer's block. I had ceased to be proud of what I was making under the band moniker and had run out of drummers willing to drop their stable lives to come hit the road in discomfort. Stuck in Peoria, I took a job as a house painter for the summer. This put some much-needed cash in my pocket. Seeing opportunity for change, I then started saving, and by the fall, I was able to get out of town. I moved in with an old friend at Chicago. I got a couple jobs collecting door money and working security for promoters that I had previously booked my band with. My hope was that with a far larger city at my disposal, I would find a drummer that made a good fit, make more influential connections in the music scene, and find a girlfriend that hadn't already been an acquaintance of mine for at least a decade.
What brought me down? Frustration in which I drown. Winding up to a dream I was clinging. Grasped tight until dreams stopped breathing. For one, swear that my intention was good. And for two, like that it be understood that for me I like to serve me true. And to you, I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you. Now rise. Now rise. There's a glow in my eyes. Rise. Windy city streets and the lights I ride beneath, like the sun has never gone down. Oh, this rusted town's one such a place as me who for 2 years did see soul life from the inside of a van. Bigger to give life to this man. Rise.
After 4 years of being sidetracked by the British in Indiana and Michigan, Jean-Baptiste and family returned to their Chicago home, likely using funds from a sale of land back in Peoria to facilitate the move. Here, they built up a business utilizing skills they'd picked up at the pinery. By the time Jean's daughter Suzanne married in 1790, their Chicago trading post contained a wooden homestead, a bakehouse, a smokehouse, a poultry house, a dairy, a workshop, a horse mill, a barn, and 2 stables. Both the English and the French used this trading post as a pit stop. The Chicago River and Lake Michigan made it an ideal place to restock supplies when heading into or out of the heart of North America. By 1794, travelers were describing Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable as a wealthy man. He was also noted to be quite an art lover, with several paintings hanging throughout his frontier residence. It seems that Jean had built up quite a successful business and comfortable life by the 1790s, which is why many historians are confused about why the family left Chicago in 1800. Many hypothesize that the move was the result of a failed candidacy in local tribal elections. And I must say that this blows my mind. Jean-Baptiste had been living among the Potawatomi for over 30 years, but the idea that a foreigner could actually attempt to be a regional chieftain sounds unthinkable. Well, he did run, but he failed. Baptiste ended up selling his property to a newer trader, an Indian agent in the area by the name of Jean Lalime. The traders William Burnett and John Kinsey signed off as witnesses to the sale. Yes, John Kinsey bought Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable's house and property, and then Kinsey's family tried to claim Kinsey to be Chicago's first permanent resident. It would be laughable if it hadn't worked for 150 years. Following the sale at Chicago, Jean moved back south to Peoria for 5 years, and then on to St. Charles, Missouri to be near his son Jean-Baptiste Jr., who was working on the Missouri River. By this time, Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable was in his 60s and needing to think about end-of-life care. To acquire this, he signed over his property in St. Charles to his 16-year-old granddaughter, Eulalie, and her husband, Michael de Rise, in exchange for care and funeral duties. Eulalie and Michael did not follow through with these duties, and Jean-Baptiste Jr. passed away in 1814. This left Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable to fend for himself with little to his name. Jean-Baptiste wound up applying for the benefit of the law relative to insolvents. And so it was that a free black man who at one time had owned a large trading post and over 800 acres of land died comparatively poor and was buried in an unmarked grave on October 28, 1818. It wouldn't be until 1965 that the city of Chicago would recognize him as its true father.
17, she found me lonely and sketching by myself. Then at 18 is when she told me you ain't gonna amount to anything else than a working man. You're a working man. You ain't got talent, you ain't got skill. Yeah, you're a working man. You're a working man. You better keep yourself in school. So I went to college, got some scholarships. I tried to make my parents proud, but at admissions they asked, why not do business, yo? Making this harder on yourself. Cause you're a working man, you're a working man. Sure you got talent, you got skill, but be a working man, be a working man. Life feels better when not uphill. Well, I'm stubborn and I don't listen. Sometimes it feels like I've been pissing my years away, and it's a battle to make the good things stay. Well, about those years I've lunged into my fears that I wouldn't amount to anything, and I don't amount to much, but my skin sure thickened up, and I'm no stranger to a hard work day. Cause I'm a working man, I'm a working man. Sure I had talent, but I'm learning skills. Yeah, I'm a working man, I'm a working man. I'll die with calluses and dirty nails.
That first winter in Chicago was fairly rough for me. I didn't have any money for gas, so I learned to ride my bike in freezing temperatures for the few miles between my apartment in Logan Square and the clubs where I worked in Wicker Park. I did start dating a girl that I met at a house party, but the relationship was short-lived. Once things finally started warming up around May, life got a lot better. I no longer dreaded my daily commute, and I was able to explore the city further. The biggest seasonal improvement was that one of my good friends had a stoop that we could drink on through the warm nights. I had known Lucas since high school, and around our senior year, he had become one of my closest pals. While he moved away to Chicago after high school, our friendship had only strengthened with the distance. Through the years that I had attended Bradley University and toured with music afterward, I had often traveled up to spend New Year's Eve and birthdays with Lucas. Inversely, Lucas would come back to Peoria to party with me on occasion. We were both artists, and throughout our young adulthood had remained valuable critics of each other's work. I had wanted to be a comic book artist in college, but Lucas had actually made it happen, and had made a nice name for himself in the Chicago arts community. So, during the summer of 2008, Lucas was working nights waiting tables in a restaurant. It worked out well that when each of us would get off work in the early a.m., we could drink together until sunup. Neither of us had much money, as Lucas had a lot of school debts that he was still paying off. This made drinking in bars rather impossible, so buying a cube or a dirty 30 of old style or PBR was the standard. Sometimes we would gather a small group on the stoop with other acquaintances. Lucas's roommates would join us. We'd say hi to strangers passing by. Co-workers would follow us home. We'd laugh and sing to tunes that squawked through the tiny thrift store radio with an extension cord running to Lucas's third-story apartment window. Lucas would sketch between sips of beer. Looking back, it seems so innocent and carefree. We were disastrous messes of people, but it was the best of times in those long, cozy nights. Of course, fall did eventually come around, and it became clear that I wouldn't make it through another winter in Chicago while working in the clubs. At this point, I picked up a job in a grocery store with early morning hours, and so my lifestyle was killed off. At 29 years old, I had rarely worked a 40-hour work week at a straight job. It was painful, but necessary. While I did find a steady drummer for the band, and we did get to play some shows out of state and in Europe, We never achieved the full-time rock and roll status that the band had had back in Peoria. Rent was just too expensive. I dated several women over the next several years and even experienced the joy of living alone. Chicago never quite fit me, though. After falling in love with the woman who would become my wife, we started immediately discussing our long-term future. The band wasn't in it, and neither was Chicago. After 9 years in the Windy City, I moved with my wife and toddler down to the city where I was born, returning to Peoria, Illinois. The band with and without Dominic had been a grind, but back in Peoria, I then found myself working 60-hour work weeks in order to take care of the family. Different day, different grind.
And when I saw you rise up again, it was a dream I had when I was a kid, and I will never be leaving you again, and I will not go back. I never wanted to feel this toward you. It's been a long time, so now who's fooling who? And I will never be leaving you again, and I will not go back. I've lost my faith in every word you've said. The Holy Spirit is a ghost inside my head, but I'll take comfort believing in myself, knowing my blood pumps from my vein to someone else. And if I'm wrong, show me I'm wrong. I'll be persuaded, or just go on, and I will never be leaving you again, and I will not go back.
Could not believe the stars at midnight, the view from my front step, the simple things that I took for granted. In all those years I wish I'd left. Well, the people living steady don't get too upset. Economy slows down, the road you go down might be the only thing you got left to call home.
Thank you for listening to Middle America. The featured music for this episode was Ghost Inside My Head and You Give Me by Matt Cobillas. Everything else was created by Jared Grabb with help from Thomas Satterfield on drums and Chris Anderson on bass guitar. You can see a full listing of the music in today's episode on the episode's webpage at midamericapod.buzzsprout.com. Editing assistance was provided by Becca Taylor. If you enjoy the show and would like to support it, 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and subscriptions over at patreon.com/midamericapod are the best ways to do that. Speaking of which, thank you so much to Juddy Power and Fortune Bloom for your recent reviews. Keep on fighting the good fight, folks. Until next time.